The chandeliers shimmered above the elegant dining hall, scattering golden light across polished wine glasses and silver cutlery. The air was thick with laughter, violin music, and the soft clinking of champagne flutes. To anyone watching, it looked like the perfect evening, a celebration of love, wealth, and success. But to Daniel Royce, it felt like a silent storm was brewing beneath the surface. His fiancée, Emily, sat across the table, smiling politely at her parents, her eyes betraying a certain coldness that Daniel couldn't quite understand. Everything was beautiful, yet something about that beauty felt staged. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us share more stories that touch hearts and remind the world that compassion still exists. Daniel Royce wasn't born into wealth. He built it, from sleeping in a small attic room to owning one of the largest architecture firms in the city. He had struggled through years of poverty, heartbreak, and sleepless nights, all for a single dream, to create a life that his late mother would have been proud of. Yet now, sitting in the grandest restaurant of the city, surrounded by luxury and applause, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Emily's family had always looked down on Daniel. They smiled in public but whispered in private. Her father once told her, "He may have money now, but he will never have class." Still, Daniel loved Emily, her charm, her laughter, her soft way of saying his name. Or at least, he thought he did. Lately, her warmth had turned into calculation. She had become distant, her affection replaced by subtle manipulation, a change Daniel was too blinded by love to see clearly. As the waiter poured wine into his glass, Daniel looked around the hall. Every table was filled with powerful people, business magnates, politicians, celebrities. Emily's father had arranged the dinner as a pre-wedding celebration. Daniel should have been grateful, but his instincts told him otherwise. Something about the way the guests looked at him, the way Emily's parents smiled, felt orchestrated. Then, out of nowhere, the waitress approached. She was young, her uniform slightly wrinkled, her eyes trembling with urgency. As she leaned closer to refill Daniel's glass, her voice dropped to a whisper, just loud enough for him to hear. "Run now, before it's too late." For a split second, Daniel froze. The words didn't make sense. Run. From what? He looked up at her, but she had already straightened her posture, pretending to adjust the silver tray as if nothing had happened. His heart started pounding. He glanced at Emily, still smiling, chatting with her mother, unaware of what had just been said. Or, maybe she wasn't unaware at all. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He placed his glass down gently and excused himself, pretending to take a call. As he walked out of the main hall, the waitress followed, her eyes darting nervously toward the guards near the entrance. Once they were out of earshot, she whispered again, her voice trembling. "They're going to drug your drink, tonight. You were never supposed to leave this restaurant alive." The words hit Daniel like a lightning strike. He felt dizzy, not from the alcohol, but from shock. "What are you talking about?" he managed to ask, though his throat felt tight. The waitress looked terrified. "Your fiancée and her father, they've been planning this for weeks. They've emptied one of your accounts already. I overheard them. Please, go. Now." For a moment, Daniel wanted to believe it was some cruel prank, some misunderstanding. But then his mind began racing back through the last few weeks, the strange documents Emily had asked him to sign, the new lawyer she introduced, the insistence on joint accounts, and how her father had suddenly become overly interested in his business deals. His blood ran cold. It all made sense now. Without wasting another second, Daniel slipped out through the kitchen exit. The staff watched in confusion as he pushed open the back door and disappeared into the daylight outside. The bright afternoon sun hit his face as if waking him from a dream. Behind him, laughter still echoed faintly from the restaurant, like a haunting melody from a life he no longer belonged to. He got into his car and drove, nowhere specific, just away. Away from betrayal, from lies, from the illusion of love. As he drove down the highway, flashes of memories flooded his mind, Emily's smile, her promises, her soft voice telling him he was the best thing that ever happened to her. Every word, every touch now felt poisoned. He pulled over by the sea and sat silently, watching the waves crash against the rocks, his reflection trembling in the glass window. Hours passed before his phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. "Daniel, I need to talk. There's been an attempt to transfer all your company shares. Did you authorize it?" His hands trembled as he typed back, "No." Within minutes, it became clear, Emily's family had planned everything. They wanted his empire, not his heart. For days, Daniel stayed hidden. The waitress, whose name was Anna, reached out again, apologizing for not speaking sooner. She confessed that she worked part-time for the restaurant and had overheard Emily's father bribing someone to alter Daniel's legal documents. She couldn't live with the guilt of staying silent. "I just couldn't let them destroy you," she said. That simple act of courage saved Daniel's life. He offered her protection, but Anna refused any reward. "Just promise me one thing," she said softly. "Don't let this make you hate people. Not everyone who walks into your life wants to take something away." Those words changed him. Daniel realized that kindness, even from a stranger, could be the strongest light in the darkest moments. He rebuilt his company, cut all ties with Emily's family, and decided to dedicate part of his wealth to helping others who had been deceived or betrayed. His new foundation provided legal aid to those wronged in silence. And at every event, when he spoke about his journey, he mentioned a nameless waitress who had once saved him with 6 words, "Run now, before it's too late." Months later, Daniel met Anna again, this time at a charity dinner, but now she wasn't serving tables, she was managing the event. Her eyes still held the same kindness, but now with confidence. They smiled at each other, not with romance, but with deep, mutual respect. She had reminded him of humanity when he was about to lose faith in it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Every click helps us spread real stories that remind people of the power of compassion, courage, and doing the right thing, even when it's dangerous. And before you go, tell us in the comments, would you have trusted the waitress, or stayed to find out the truth? Because sometimes, life gives you one quiet whisper, a warning that can save everything you are. And if you're lucky enough to hear it, you must have the courage to run before it's too late. It was raining that afternoon, the kind of rain that feels heavier than water, the kind that carries memories, regrets, and the weight of broken promises. Claire sat quietly in her wheelchair outside a cozy little cafe in the city, her trembling hands gripping the edge of her cup as the coffee inside grew cold. Her dress, a soft beige one she had chosen carefully for this day, fluttered gently in the wind. It was supposed to be a new beginning, her first date in years since the accident that changed her life. But as the minutes turned into an hour, and every passing car made her heart leap with false hope, reality began to sink in. He wasn't coming. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected miracles, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, where stories like this remind us that compassion still exists in the world. Claire had once been full of life, an artist who painted dreams in colors brighter than her own reality. She loved the way sunlight touched her skin in the morning and how city lights danced on rainy nights. But 2 years ago, a car accident had taken more than her ability to walk, it had taken her confidence, her laughter, and a part of her hope. Since then, she had been learning to rebuild, one painful, quiet day at a time. This date was supposed to be different. She had met him online, a kind, charming man who said he admired her strength and courage. For weeks they had talked about their lives, their favorite books, and dreams of a future filled with love and warmth. Claire had almost convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, she could love again. But as the rain fell harder and the cafe lights dimmed, her dream began to dissolve like the raindrops sliding down the window. People passing by gave her sympathetic glances, some pitied her, others looked away. That hurt the most. She could feel the ache in her chest rise as she watched couples laughing together, holding hands under umbrellas. She wanted to disappear, to roll away before anyone could see her tears. But her wheelchair felt heavier today, not from its metal frame, but from the weight of disappointment. She finally lowered her head, whispering to herself, "Why did I think anyone would want to be with someone like me?" And that's when it happened. A deep, calm voice broke through the sound of rain. Claire looked up slowly to see a tall man standing in front of her, holding a little girl in his arms. The man was wearing a gray coat, his hair slicked back, his expression serious yet gentle. The little girl in a red dress clutched a small stuffed unicorn and looked at Claire with wide, innocent eyes. For a second, Claire thought they might be lost or looking for someone. But the man spoke softly, his voice carrying warmth even in the cold air. "Are you all right?" You look like you've been waiting a long time." Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. Her throat tightened, her pride fighting against her pain. She nodded weakly, trying to force a smile, but her eyes betrayed her. The man crouched slightly, setting the little girl down beside him. The child stepped closer, her tiny boots splashing in the puddles. She looked up at Claire and said in a small, sweet voice, "Why are you sad?" That simple question shattered the walls Claire had spent months building. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound that came out was closer to a sob. "I was just waiting for someone," she whispered. The man's eyes softened. He didn't ask anything more, didn't pry into her pain. Instead, he looked toward the cafe and said, "Would you like some company? My daughter and I were about to grab a hot chocolate." For a moment, Claire hesitated. She didn't want to be a burden. But the little girl smiled, tugged her hand gently, and said, "Come with us. Daddy says no one should be alone when it rains." Something about those words, simple, pure, and kind, melted the loneliness that had been suffocating her. She nodded, and the men helped guide her wheelchair inside. The warmth of the cafe wrapped around her instantly, chasing away the cold and the sting of rejection. They sat by the window, and for the first time that day, Claire felt seen, not as the woman in a wheelchair, but as a person who mattered. As they talked, Claire learned that the man's name was Daniel, a CEO of a tech company, though he spoke of it humbly, almost reluctantly. He had lost his wife 3 years ago, leaving him to raise his daughter, Lily, alone. The pain in his voice when he mentioned her was quiet but deep, the kind that only someone who's truly loved could understand. Claire shared bits of her story too, the accident, the months of therapy, and the loneliness that followed. There were moments of silence, but they weren't uncomfortable. They were healing. Lily kept making Claire laugh, showing her the unicorn, pretending it could talk, even offering it to her as a loan, until she smiled again. For the first time in a long while, Claire laughed, really laughed. It echoed softly through the cafe, and Daniel found himself smiling, watching how her eyes came alive again. As hours passed, the rain outside slowed to a drizzle. The streets glistened under the fading daylight. Daniel insisted on walking Claire to her car, but she explained she had come by bus. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Then let us drop you home. Please, it would make me feel better." His tone was so genuine that she couldn't refuse. During the drive, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her little hands wrapped around her unicorn. The car was filled with a comfortable silence, only the soft hum of the engine breaking it. When they reached her apartment, Claire turned to Daniel and whispered, "Thank you for today. You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't have." He smiled faintly and said, "Maybe most people wouldn't. But I teach my daughter that sometimes, the best moments in life come when you stop for someone who needs a little kindness." That night, as Claire sat by her window, she replayed the day in her mind. What began as heartbreak had turned into something unexpectedly beautiful. She realized that maybe life wasn't about waiting for someone to show up, but about noticing the people who already do. From that day forward, Daniel and Lily became part of her story. They visited her often, shared meals, laughter, and slowly, Claire began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. Daniel admired her courage, her strength, and her heart. And one evening, months later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily placed her unicorn on Claire's lap and said, "Daddy says you smile better now. That means you're happy." Claire looked at Daniel, her eyes glistening. He simply nodded, as if to say, "I am, too." Sometimes, life doesn't give us the people we expect, it gives us the people we need. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in kindness and new beginnings. Subscribe to Kindness Thread for more real, soul-stirring stories that remind us humanity still shines. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe that strangers can change our lives forever? And as Claire learned that day, maybe the end of one dream is just the quiet beginning of another, one filled with hope, love, and the courage to believe again. The hospital corridor was flooded with bright daytime light pouring in through tall glass windows, the kind of light that usually brings hope. But that day, it felt cruel. Machines beeped steadily behind a closed delivery room door, and the smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air. Inside, a pregnant woman lay motionless on the bed, her body exhausted after hours of labor. Outside that door, emotions collided in ways no one could have imagined. What was about to happen would expose hearts, betrayals, and a truth so powerful it would change everything. Before the story goes any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of humanity, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Thread. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Aisha, a quiet, gentle woman whose strength had always been invisible to those who benefited from it the most. She had married into a wealthy family, believing love would be enough to bridge the gap between her modest background and their cold expectations. But from the very beginning, she was treated like an inconvenience rather than a blessing. Her in-laws tolerated her presence only because she carried their family name forward. Her husband, once attentive, slowly drifted away, drawn to status, pride, and another woman who fit his world better than Aisha ever could. Throughout her pregnancy, Aisha endured silent battles. Morning sickness that never seemed to end, sleepless nights, and constant anxiety about whether her child would be accepted or resented. She was often alone in the large house, sunlight streaming through expensive curtains while she sat quietly, resting her hands on her growing belly, whispering prayers for her unborn child. No one noticed how thin she became, how her smile faded, or how her eyes carried fear behind their calm surface. The day of delivery arrived under a clear blue sky. Birds chirped outside the hospital windows, and the city moved on as usual, unaware that a life was about to hang by a thread. Complications arose during labor, unexpected and severe. Doctors rushed, nurses moved swiftly, and time stretched painfully. Outside the delivery room, her husband stood stiffly, more irritated than worried. His mother paced with forced impatience, complaining about delays. Beside them stood the woman he had been secretly seeing, her presence barely concealed, her expression unreadable. Then came the moment that shattered everything. The doctors emerged with heavy faces, their eyes trained on the floor. Medical efforts, they explained, had failed. The woman had lost too much strength. According to all signs, she was gone. The words landed like a verdict. Aisha, the quiet wife, the unwanted daughter-in-law, was declared dead. What followed was not grief. It was relief disguised as shock. Her mother-in-law let out a breath she had been holding for years. The husband closed his eyes, not in pain, but in release. The future suddenly felt lighter to them, unburdened. The woman beside him tightened her grip on her purse, already imagining a different life. In the brightly lit hospital corridor, they spoke softly, not out of respect, but convenience. Their faces showed something close to celebration, thinly veiled as composure. Inside the delivery room, however, something else was happening. Aisha's body lay still, but life had not completely left her. Beneath the layers of exhaustion and trauma, her heart fought on. A monitor flickered, a faint rhythm barely noticeable. One doctor, trained to look beyond the obvious, leaned closer, checking again. Beneath the silence, there it was. A fragile pulse. And then another miracle revealed itself. Not one heartbeat, but two. The babies were alive. Twins. In that instant, the room shifted. What was once a scene of defeat became one of urgency and awe. Medical staff moved with renewed purpose, daylight reflecting off stainless steel instruments as they worked to save what could still be saved. Aisha's body responded slowly, as if clawing its way back from the edge. Oxygen filled her lungs, medication flowed, and the faint pulse grew stronger. When the doctor stepped back into the corridor, the atmosphere changed. The family expected confirmation, paperwork, closure. Instead, they received a truth that stunned them into silence. The woman they had already dismissed was not gone. She was alive, barely, and she had given birth to twins. Shock spread across their faces. The relief they had tasted moments ago curdled into confusion and fear. Suddenly, the narrative they had written for themselves collapsed. The husband's hands trembled. The woman beside him took a step back, her imagined future dissolving. The mother-in-law's confident posture crumbled as reality pressed in. Hours later, daylight still streamed through the windows when Aisha's eyes fluttered open. Her body ached, her throat burned, and her limbs felt impossibly heavy. But she was alive. In the neonatal unit nearby, two tiny lives breathed steadily, unaware of the storm that had surrounded their arrival. Nurses watched over them carefully, their small chests rising and falling in quiet defiance of fate. Recovery was slow. Aisha spent days drifting in and out of consciousness, her mind piecing together fragments. When clarity returned, she did not ask about her husband or her in-laws. She asked about her babies. When she was finally wheeled into the nursery, sunlight spilling gently across the room, tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Against all odds, they were here. Proof that life could bloom even in the harshest conditions. The people who once dismissed her now hovered awkwardly, unsure of their place. Apologies came late and hollow. Promises sounded empty. Aisha listened, but something inside her had changed. Near death had stripped away her fear. Motherhood had given her strength she never knew she possessed. In the weeks that followed, she made choices for herself and her children. Choices rooted in dignity, not desperation. She accepted help where it was genuine and walked away where it was not. Day by day, under the same bright sun that had once witnessed her near end, she rebuilt her life. Not as someone's burden, but as a survivor. As a mother of two. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your engagement helps spread stories of resilience and hope. Before we end, we have one special request. Please comment below with your thoughts or a message of kindness for mothers who fight unseen battles every day. Your words may reach someone who truly needs them. Aisha's story reminds us that life can surprise us in the most unexpected ways. That kindness matters, even when it is not returned. And that sometimes, when the world declares an ending, it is only the beginning.